Let me thank Jay Steves for the music. Let me thank Dwayne Fisher for the field pitch. Let me thank Mayor Stephen McCullough. And let me thank Senator Nina Turner. Senator Turner has been doing some of the most important work that anybody can do. Not only being on our campaign, but going all over this country, doing what all of us have got to do, and that is get people involved in the political process. If people simply sit back and complain, ain't gonna do anybody any good. We gotta get involved, we gotta stand up, we gotta fight for justice. That's what Senator Turner is doing. That's what each and every one of us has got to do. Now, it seems to me that our campaign is engaged in two basic fights. Number one, we must and we will defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president. The most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. And no matter what your political point of view may be, I think you understand that the United States cannot continue to have a president who is a pathological liar, a president who is running a corrupt administration, a president who has apparently never read the Constitution of the United States, a president who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. And those are his good qualities. We are going to defeat Donald Trump because he is also a fraud. See, a fraud is somebody who tells you one thing and does something very different. When Trump was here in South Carolina in 2016 as a candidate, he said, I am going to provide health care for everybody. He lied. He tried to throw 32 million people off the health care that they have. When Trump ran for president, he said, hey, my tax plan is not going to benefit the wealthy. He lied. 83% of the benefits go to the top 1% over a 10-year period. When Trump campaigned in 2016, he said, I will not cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. He lied. His budgets call for massive cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Trump tells us that we're supposed to hate the undocumented. But when Trump was a private businessman, he loved the undocumented because he hired hundreds of them to exploit them. Trump tells us it's a bad idea for companies to outsource jobs to low-wage countries. As a private businessman, he outsourced his factories to Turkey, to India, to Bangladesh, to China, to Mexico. We're going to win this election not just because Trump is a liar and a fraud. We're going to win this election because we are putting together the strongest grassroots movement this country has seen in a long time. Here in South Carolina and all across this country, as we prepare for Super Tuesday, we have volunteers knocking on hundreds and hundreds of thousands of doors. Now, I know sometimes if you turn on the TV, you're going to hear some of these guys say, Bernie can't beat Trump. Well, let me say something to them. Take a look at the last 50 polls. We beat Trump 47 of them. Take a look at the polls in battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. We are beating Trump. So we are beating Trump because our agenda is the agenda of the working families of this country who are sick and tired of working longer hours for lower wages and seeing almost all new income go to the top 1%. We're going to win this election. We're going to win the primary. We're going to defeat Trump because the American people want an economy and a government that works for all, not just wealthy campaign contributors. We're going to win this election because people all across this country and in South Carolina understand that a $7.25 an hour minimum wage is a starvation wage. And that is why we're going to raise that federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. We're going to win this election because we believe in equal pay for equal work. Women should not make 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. And we're going to win this election because millions of workers all across this country want to join unions. Now, I know that here in South Carolina, your governor and your legislature don't like unions. I like unions. And that is why we're going to make it easier for workers to join unions so they can engage in collective bargaining, win decent wages and decent benefits. We're going to win this election because in the richest country on earth, our infrastructure should not be crumbling. We're going to create millions of good-paying jobs, rebuilding our roads and our bridges and our water systems and our wastewater plants, and building 10 million units of affordable and low-income housing. This is America. 500,000 people, including 30,000 veterans who put their lives on the line, should not be sleeping out on the streets tonight. We're going to win this election because the American people know that education is enormously important. They know that working families need a high-quality child care system, which is why we're going to fight for universal, high-quality, affordable child care for all families. It is why we're going to triple funding for low-income Title I schools. And that is important all over this country. It is especially important here in South Carolina. I don't have to tell you that in South Carolina, you got a very significant education crisis. And I believe that all kids are entitled to quality education, not simply an education based on where their zip code is. And I have talked to great teachers here in South Carolina who are leaving the profession because they can't earn a salary to take care of their families. We don't need our teachers working 2 or 3 jobs. We don't need teachers taking money out of their own pockets to buy school supplies for their kids. And that is why we're going to fight to make certain that in America, no teacher earns less than $60,000 a year. And we're going to win this election because the American people are sick and tired of being the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people as a human right. The American people are sick and tired of being ripped off by the drug companies who charge us the highest prices in the world for the medicine we need. They are sick and tired of having a healthcare system in which we spend twice as much. Let me say that again. In America, we are spending twice as much as the Canadians, the Europeans, any other country on earth. And yet, despite spending $11,000 for every man, woman, and child, 87 million of us are uninsured or underinsured. 30,000 people die each year because they don't get to a doctor when they should because they don't have insurance. That is unacceptable. And what is unacceptable also, and this is speaking to the cruelty of this system, 500,000 people go bankrupt because of medically related debt. What that means is that somebody who is struggling with cancer, fighting for their lives, somebody is struggling with severe heart illness, somebody is struggling with Alzheimer's, you got enough to worry about fighting for your life. You should not have to worry that your family is going to face financial ruin. Meanwhile, while 87 million people are uninsured or underinsured, last year, the insurance companies and the drug companies made $100 billion in profit. So we have the radical idea that maybe the function of a humane and sane healthcare system is to guarantee healthcare to all people, not to make billions in profits for the drug companies or the insurance companies. And that is why, together, we are going to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. Right now, Medicare is a good system, but you got to be 65 or older to get into it. Over a 4-year period, we're going to go from 65 to 55 to 45 to 35. Everybody is in. No premiums, no co-payments, no deductibles, no out-of-pocket expenses. We are going to win this election because the American people are a lot smarter than Donald Trump. And here in South Carolina or in Vermont, any place else, the American people understand that climate change is not a hoax, but an existential threat to our country and to the entire world. I don't have to tell the people of South Carolina about that, because what the scientists are now telling us is if we don't get our act together, what we are going to see is more rising sea levels, and that means cities like Myrtle Beach, cities like Charleston, cities like Miami, cities like New Orleans, cities like New York City, by the end of this century, will be partially underwater or even more. What the scientists are telling us is that drought in America and around the world is becoming a more and more serious problem. Turn on the TV and look at Australia burning. Australia is on fire. That is the future of the world if we don't get our act together. What the scientists are telling us is the ocean is becoming more and more acidic. Fish are dying. People are not going to be able to get the protein they need from fish, which they historically have. We're looking at more and more extreme weather disturbances, hurricanes that are more and more destructive, rain downpours, more and more flooding. And what the United Nations tells us, if we don't get our act together, by the end of the century, there could be hundreds of millions of climate refugees, people who cannot continue to live in their own communities because there's no drinking water, no land to grow their crops. And when you're hundreds of millions of people migrating, you're going to have wars and international disturbances. We have a moral responsibility to make certain that we leave this planet in a healthy and habitable way for our children and future generations. And that is why I am proud to tell you, we have introduced the most sweeping climate change proposal ever introduced by a federal candidate based on the principles of the Green New Deal. And that means we can create up to 20 million good-paying union jobs as we transition, as we move our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Instead of having a president who ignores the issue, or in fact makes the issue even worse, in our administration, you're going to have a president who's going to reach out to people all over the world, because this is not an American issue, it is a global issue. And what we're going to say to the people in China, in Russia, in Pakistan, in India, in Brazil, in Africa, in Latin America, all over the world, that we are in this together. We're all in it together as a planet. And that maybe, just maybe, instead of spending $1.8 trillion a year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we should combine our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. And when we talk about an agenda that works for the American people, we are going to bring fundamental reform to a broken and racist criminal justice system. This is America. We should not have more people in jail than any other country on earth. We are going to invest in our children, in our young people, in good jobs and education, not more jails and incarceration. I want our young people to make it into the middle class, to be productive citizens, not rot away in jails. We are going to abolish private prisons and detention centers. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do. We're going to end the so-called war on drugs. There are some things a president can do with executive order, some things you need legislation. One of the things you can do with executive order, and I will do on my first day in the White House, is to legalize marijuana in every state in the country. All right, here's the question, all right? Here is a question. You ready for a hard question? How many people here know somebody arrested for possession of marijuana? This is what the war on drugs has done, and that is why we're going to expunge the records of those people arrested for possession of marijuana. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do, and this was not my idea. It's an idea that came to me from friends in the African American and Latino communities. And that is, when marijuana is legal throughout this country, we're not just going to let a handful of corporations control that industry. We are going to invest in those communities, African American community, Latino community, Native American community, those communities that have been hit hardest by the war on drugs, that have suffered the most. And we're going to help those communities create the businesses they need to profit off of the legalization of marijuana.